The damp air of the basement reeks of mold and expensive detergent. Above me, the floorboards creak under the weight of the sun I raised, while the smart lock clicks shut with a finality that chills my bones. I am 62 years old, and my own flesh and blood just buried me alive to steal a signature. But as I clutch his platinum credit card in the dark, I know one thing. I am not dying down here. My name is Margaret Doyle, and at 62 years old, I am currently sitting on the cold concrete floor of a basement in Redstone City, my wrists bound together with a thick plastic zip tie. The air down here is heavy and damp, smelling of mildew mixed with the expensive lavender fabric softener my daughter-in-law insists on importing from France. Above my head, the single fluorescent bulb flickers with a maddening buzz, casting long, jumping shadows against the cinder block walls. I close my eyes and listen. The ceiling above me is merely the floor of the living room. I can hear the heavy, restless footsteps of my son, Evan. Thump, thump. He is pacing. This basement was never meant to be a prison. It was supposed to be a selling point. When I helped them buy this house, I admired the finished laundry area, the chest freezer stocked with organic meats, and the rows of metal shelving units. But now, the heavy door at the top of the short staircase is sealed tight. I heard the distinct mechanical whir of the smart lock engaging 10 minutes ago. Sabrina, my daughter-in-law, must have tapped the button on her phone to activate the deadlock. "Mom, please, just stop shouting," Sabrina had said through the door, her voice trembling with that fake, sugary concern she uses when she wants something. "You are not well. You need to calm down. We are doing this for your safety. My safety." The irony tastes like bile in my throat. I lean my head back against the humming chest freezer and let the memory of 3 hours ago wash over me. We were in the kitchen. The granite countertops were gleaming. Evan had slammed a stack of documents down in front of me. He did not look like the boy I raised. He looked like a desperate stranger. "Just sign the papers." "Mom!" Evan had yelled, his face turning an ugly shade of red. "It is a power of attorney. That is all. We take over the operations of Sunrise Clean and Care, and you retire. We are trying to reduce the burden on you." "I am not signing over my company. Evan," I had told him, keeping my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. "I built that business with my own sweat. You have never scrubbed a toilet in your life." That was when he snapped. I remember the look in his eyes, pure, black rage. He shoved me. It was not a stumble. It was a hard, deliberate push. I flew backward. I felt the air leave my lungs as my back hit the wall, and then I tumbled down the open basement stairs. 1, 2, 3 steps. I landed hard on my left hip, the pain blinding me for a moment. Through the haze, I saw Sabrina standing at the top of the stairs. She did not scream. She did not call 911. She just looked at Evan, then at me, and closed the door. For the first hour, I humiliated myself. I, Margaret Doyle, who manages 40 employees and secures contracts with the wealthiest estates in the state, pounded on the door like a trapped animal. I screamed until my throat was raw. And in response, I heard the volume of the television go up. A laugh track from a sitcom filtered down through the floorboards, drowning out my cries. They were watching TV while I lay on the concrete. Now. It is past midnight. The house is finally silent. The pain in my hip is a dull, throbbing ache. But my mind is razor sharp. I stop crying. Crying gets you nothing in this world. I look around the dim room. Evan is lazy. He has always been lazy. Whenever the Wi-Fi signal drops, he comes down here to reset the router, and because he hates uncomfortable things in his pockets, he empties them into the old, rusted red toolbox sitting on the bottom shelf of the rhythmic rack. I scoot over to the shelf. It is awkward with my hands tied, but I manage to hook the plastic loop of the zip tie on a jagged metal edge of the shelving unit. I grit my teeth. I pull. Hard. The plastic digs into my skin, cutting me. But then snap. My hands are free. I rub my wrists and reach for the toolbox. Please, Evan, be your usual sloppy self. I lift the lid. My heart hammers against my ribs. There, sitting on top of a greasy wrench, is his leather wallet. He must have left it down here yesterday and was too lazy to come back for it. I open it with trembling fingers. Inside, tucked behind his driver's license, is the card. It is a Liberty Crest Bank Platinum credit card. The silver letters catch the weak light. Evan Doyle. And right below it, authorized user Margaret Doyle. He gave me this card 6 months ago to show off. He wanted me to see how successful his startup, Pulsegate Labs, was, he told me. Mum, keep this for emergencies. It is a business account. Limit is, well, it is practically unlimited. I shove the wallet into my pocket. I do not look at the main door. That smart lock is unbreakable without the code. But I know houses. I have cleaned them, fixed them, and maintained them for 30 years. I know that in these old suburban builds, behind the drywall near the water main, there is often a builder's access hatch leading to the crawl space under the back deck. I drag the heavy chest freezer aside, inch by inch. My hip screams in protest. There it is. A small, wooden panel painted to match the wall. I pry it open with a screwdriver from the toolbox. The smell of wet earth and dead leaves hits me. I crawl into the darkness. Spiders scuttle over my hands. I drag my body through the dirt, under the wooden beams of the deck, until I find the lattice skirting. I kick it. Once. Twice. The rotten wood gives way. I roll out onto the wet grass of the backyard. The night air is cold, biting at my skin. My knees are bleeding, staining my slacks. I stand up, swaying slightly. The neighborhood is dead silent. The big, beautiful houses of Redstone City are sleeping, oblivious to the crime happening behind the closed blinds of number 42. I reach into my pocket and wrap my fingers around the cold plastic of the credit card. My phone is dead, but I have something better. I turn back to look at the house one last time. All right, Evan, I whisper, my voice raspy and broken. You think you trapped me? I am going to take this card, and I am going to use your own money to tear your life apart, brick by brick. I turn my collar up against the wind and start walking into the dark. The cold wind bites at my exposed face as I walk away from the life I built, triggering memories I thought I had buried under layers of success and granite countertops. I did not start out as a woman with a platinum credit card and a business empire. I started as a ghost. I grew up in Milford, Ohio, a town where the sky was perpetually stained grey by the smokestacks of the steel mill. My mother worked the night shift, coming home with hands that looked like leather and eyes that looked like ash. She taught me the only lesson that matters in a place like that. Maggie, she would say, dipping her swollen feet into a plastic tub of hot water. Nobody is coming to save you. You rely on yourself, or you starve. I took that lesson to heart. At 19 years old, I packed a single suitcase and moved to Redstone City. I got a job as a janitor in a small office building downtown. For 3 years, I was invisible. Men in expensive suits would walk right past me while I scrubbed the marble floors, stepping over my wet floor sign as if I were part of the furniture. But while they ignored me, I was watching them. I carried a small spiral notebook in my apron pocket. I wrote down everything. I noted how much they paid for industrial toilet paper, how long it took to strip and wax a hallway, and exactly where the big cleaning companies cut corners. I saw the way the contract managers sneered at the small business owners renting the suites. I realized then that there was a gap in the market. The big guys sold cleaning, but they did not sell dignity. I believed that cleanliness and respect could be a brand. Then I met Patrick. He was a delivery driver with a laugh that could fill a room and hands as rough as mine. He was the only one who saw the potential in my little notebook. "You are going to run this town one day, Maggie," Patrick told me once, holding our newborn son, Evan, in his arms. "You have got fire in you, but fire burns out without fuel." Patrick died in a traffic accident on a rainy Tuesday, leaving me with a toddler, a broken heart, and a life insurance payout that was barely enough to cover the funeral and rent for 6 months. I did not buy mourning clothes. I took every cent of that insurance money, took out a predatory loan that terrified me, and bought a beat-up white van and 3 industrial vacuums. Sunrise Clean and Care was born out of desperation. I worked 16 hours a day. During the sunlight hours, I cleaned the homes of the middle class, scrubbing grout until my fingers bled. At night, I drove the van, washed the microfiber towels in my bathtub, repaired the vacuum belts with a butter knife, and answered phone calls pretending to be a receptionist named Judy. I won clients not because I was the cheapest, but because I cared. I remembered the names of their golden retrievers. I sent handwritten cards on their children's birthdays. I left small notes on the counter saying, "Hope you enjoy your clean kitchen." Evan grew up in the middle of this chaos, but I made sure he never felt the grit of it. Our apartment was cramped, filled with boxes of bleach and floor wax. But I sent him to private school. I paid for computer camps and tennis lessons. I wanted to scrub the poverty off our family name so thoroughly that he would never know what it smelled like. I created a divide. I lived in the world of dirt so he could live in the world of clean. As the years went by, the old van turned into a fleet of 20 trucks. We signed contracts with luxury gated communities and high-end real estate firms. I became wealthy, but I never stopped wearing rubber gloves when I inspected a site. Evan, however, saw the money as something that just appeared, like magic. I stopped walking for a moment, my breath hitching in the cold night air as the truth hits me harder than the pavement. I made a mistake. Patrick. I whisper to the empty street. I ruined him. I raised a boy who has never known the smell of his own sweat. I thought I was saving him from the hardship of Milford. But instead, I stripped him of his character. I taught him that money is a right, not a reward. And now, that boy has locked me in a basement because he thinks the woman who scrubbed toilets to buy his first car is nothing more than an obstacle to his inheritance. You never respected the hands that fed you. Evan, I say, clutching the stolen credit card in my pocket. Well, you are about to learn exactly how heavy those hands can be. The shadows in my life did not appear all at once. They crept in, inch by inch, disguised as ambition and progress. It started when Evan went off to the state university to study business administration. He loved to tell his fraternity brothers about his mother's service empire, but in 4 years, he never once picked up a mop or visited a job site. "Mom, please," he would say, rolling his eyes when I asked him to help with a summer shift. "I am studying market dynamics. I am destined for bigger things than scrubbing floors." I let it slide. I wanted him to be bigger. But then he brought Sabrina home. I remember the first time I met her. We met at a bistro downtown. Sabrina Reeves was beautiful, with perfectly highlighted blonde hair and a phone that seemed glued to her hand. She spent the first 10 minutes rearranging the silverware to take a picture of her appetizer. She worked in online marketing. She said, "This place is okay," she whispered to Evan, loud enough for me to hear, wrinkling her nose. "But the clientele is a bit, you know. Are we sure the seafood is fresh?" A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was the way she reduced a family-owned restaurant to a backdrop for her image. But Patrick had been gone for 20 years, and the silence in my own house was deafening. I wanted Evan to be happy. I wanted a family again. So I strangled my intuition. I paid for the wedding. It was a lavish affair at a mountain resort that cost me nearly $80,000. I invited my best clients, the ones who had stuck with Sunrise Clean and Care since the single van days. I looked around the ballroom, at the crystal chandeliers and the expensive floral arrangements, and I told myself this was the fruit of my life's labor. I was wrong. It was the down payment on my own destruction. Then came Liam and Chloe, my beautiful grandchildren. For a few years, they were the light that kept the darkness at bay. I spent every weekend at Evan's house, bringing educational toys and home-cooked meals. I thought if I loved them enough, if I made myself indispensable enough, the coldness growing between me and my son would melt away. But Sabrina had quit her job to become a full-time mom and content creator. She started filming her life for the internet, curating a perfect, beige aesthetic of suburban wealth. I remember one afternoon vividly. She was filming a morning routine in her pristine kitchen. I was in the background, dragging a heavy black trash bag out the back door because Evan had forgotten to take it out again. "Mom," Sabrina snapped, cutting the recording. "You are ruining the shot. Nobody wants to see that. It looks messy." Later, I saw the video posted. She had cropped me out, but the edge of my grey work shirt was still visible in the corner, a smudge on her perfect life. Evan, meanwhile, was burning through capital. He failed at 3 startups before launching Pulsegate Labs. He pitched it as data technology for real estate. But to me, it sounded like smoke and mirrors. He needed money. A lot of it. He convinced me to co-sign a massive business loan, using a chunk of Sunrise Clean and Care shares as collateral. That was when he gave me the card. We were sitting in his home office. He slid the heavy platinum card across the mahogany desk. "Here," he said, smiling that charming smile he inherited from his father. "It is a family card. For you to use, go shopping. Treat yourself. You are an authorized user. Mom, it helps build the company's credit profile if we have multiple users. I have my own money." "Evan," I said, eyeing the plastic. "I know," he pressed, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But I want to take care of you for a change. Please, just take it." I took it. I put it in my wallet and barely touched it. I continued to pay for my groceries and gas with my own debit card, the one linked to the sweat and bleach of my daily labor. The platinum card sat there, a shiny, hollow symbol of a trust that did not exist. My wrists ache as I recall the invisible bars they erected around me long before they locked the basement door. It started with Sabrina's house rules when I visited. No cooking after 8 o'clock, she told me one evening, wrinkling her nose at my stew. The smell, it lingers in the curtains. Then it was. Please do not bring your old friends here. Margaret, they are loud, and I am trying to get the baby to sleep. Then, no TV when I am filming. I accommodated them. I shrank myself to fit into the corners of their lives, thinking I was being a good mother. I did not realize that every rule was a brick in the wall they were building around me. I was not a guest. I was a resource to be managed. And when I became unmanageable, they decided to put me in storage. It began with a signature I gave too freely, a single pen stroke that created the first crack in my foundation. Evan had come to me with a reasonable proposal, his face the picture of filial concern. "Mom, you are killing yourself with these contract reviews," he had said, pouring me a cup of tea. "Let me take the minor signing rights for Sunrise Clean and Care. It will help. Help take the load off your shoulders." I agreed because I was tired, and that fatigue made me careless. But the real trap snapped shut 2 months later when I slipped on a wet tile while supervising a renovation cleanup and dislocated my hip. The pain was excruciating, but Evan and Sabrina saw it as an opportunity. They insisted I could not live alone in my townhouse. It was unsafe, they said. I needed family. I moved into their guest suite, thinking I was being cared for. I was wrong. I was being processed. The first week was filled with family dinners and polite conversation. But the atmosphere shifted with terrifying speed. I went from being a guest to being a tenant. And finally, a nuisance. "Margaret, you cannot run the shower at 7 o'clock. Sabrina scolded me one morning, standing in the doorway with her phone in hand. "It ruins the water pressure for my morning routine vlog. Please, just ask before you use the water." I bit my tongue and apologized. Then came the paperwork. Evan would bring stacks of documents to the dinner table, always when I was tired or medicated for my hip. "Just temporary authorizations," he claimed, sliding a page toward me. "For the bank, to handle the payroll while you recover." I glanced at the header. Harbour Line Legal Advisors. I did not know them. My company lawyer was old Mr. Henderson, but Evan insisted this was faster. I signed, trusting the blood in his veins more than the ink on the page. The gaslighting began subtly. I went to the locked cabinet in the study where I kept my personal files, only to find my deed and insurance policies missing. When I confronted Sabrina, she offered me a look of pity that made my stomach turn. "Oh, Mom," she said, tilting her head. "You probably moved them and forgot. You have been so forgetful lately. It happens." I felt a cold prickle of fear. They were not just stealing my money, they were stealing my sanity. The explosion happened on a Tuesday night over a dinner of roast chicken that tasted like ash. I had seen a notification on my phone before the battery died, a transfer of $15,000 from the Sunrise operating account to an unknown entity. Where did that money go? "Evan?" I asked, my voice cutting through the clatter of silverware. Evan dropped his fork. The silence at the table was instant. Liam and Chloe looked down at their plates, sensing the violence in the air. "You are checking the accounts," Evan demanded, his face darkening. "It is my company. I snapped. Who is the recipient? Evan slammed his hand on the table, making the wine glasses jump. You are paranoid. This is exactly what I am talking about. You do not understand modern finance, and you are obsessing over details because you have nothing else to do. Stop yelling at Grandma, Liam whispered, shrinking into his chair. Quiet, Liam. Evan roared, not even looking at his son. Sabrina reached over and placed a hand on my trembling arm. Her touch was ice cold. Margaret, she said softly, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. Maybe it is time we see a specialist. About your memory health. At your age, people start to lose the capacity to make decisions. The law has concepts for that. The threat hung in the air, naked and ugly. They were going to declare me incompetent. The next evening, Evan cornered me in the kitchen. He held a thick binder. Sign it, he said, his voice flat. Full power of attorney, total asset transfer. It is time, Mom. You are not capable anymore. I built that company from nothing, I said, backing away until I hit the counter. I am not signing. You are acting crazy, he shouted, advancing on me. Liam appeared at the doorway, his eyes wide with tears. Dad, go to your room. Liam, Evan screamed, his control snapping. He turned back to me, his eyes dead. You are unstable. You are a danger to the children. We need to separate you until you calm down. He grabbed my arm. I tried to pull away. But he was younger, stronger. He dragged me to the basement door and shoved. I stumbled, the air rushing past me as I fell into the dark. The last thing I saw before the door slammed was his face, not angry, just cold. He was not a son anymore. He was a businessman liquidating an asset. Then the lock clicked, and I was alone, standing in the shadows of the overgrown hedge at the edge of the property. I looked back at the house one last time. The light in the living room was still on. I could have run to the neighbours, the Harrisons, and pounded on their oak door. But I knew exactly what would happen. Evan would come running over, breathless and apologetic, spinning a story about his mother's early-onset dementia and how I had wandered off in a confusion. I would be medicated and locked away in a facility before sunrise. No. I had to vanish. I limped 2 miles to the bus stop on the main boulevard. My hip throbbed with every step, a reminder of the fall. But the pain kept me sharp. When the night bus finally hissed to a halt, the driver looked me up and down. I was a mess hair wild, pants stained with garden soil, eyes red. Fare is $2.50. Lady, he grunted. I pulled out the platinum card. His eyebrows shot up, but he gestured to the scanner. I tapped it. The machine beeped. Approved. That tiny green light was the most beautiful thing I had seen in years. I checked into the Starlight Motel on the outskirts of town. It was a place for truckers and people who did not want to be found. The room smelled of industrial bleach and stale cigarettes. The carpet was sticky, and the air conditioner rattled like a dying engine. It was worlds away from the Egyptian cotton sheets in Evan's guest room. But as I locked the deadbolt and slid the chain across, I felt a strange rush of oxygen fill my lungs. I was safe. I turned on the small television to drown out the silence, as if the universe wanted to mock me. A local business channel was airing a rerun of an interview. There was Evan, sitting in a plush leather chair, smiling that charming, practiced smile. At Pulsegate Labs, Evan said on the screen, We believe in transparency. We use data to clean up the future of real estate. You are a liar, Evan, I hissed at the screen, my voice trembling. You are nothing but a thief in a tailored suit. I plugged my phone into the wall with a borrowed charger from the front desk. As soon as the battery icon turned green, the device exploded with noise. 17 missed calls, 30 text messages. Where the hell are you, Mom? This isn't funny. You're sick. If you don't come back, I'm calling the police to report a missing person. Then a voice note from Sabrina. I played it, holding the phone away from my ear like it was toxic. Mom, please. Her voice cracked, sounding wet and terrified. The kids are crying. We are so worried. Just tell us where you are so he can come get you. We are family. I deleted the thread. I did not reply. The next morning, I went to work. I used Evan's card to buy a prepaid SIM card and a burner phone at a convenience store. Then I went to a discount department store and bought a clean pair of slacks, a white blouse, and a cheap blazer. I changed in the fitting room. When I looked in the mirror, I did not see the victim from the basement. I saw Margaret Doyle, the businesswoman who used to negotiate contracts with property tycoons. I called an Uber to the downtown branch of Liberty Crest Bank. I needed answers. Inside the bank, the air was cool and smelled of money. I walked up to the teller, a young woman with kind eyes, and slid the platinum card across the marble counter along with my driver's license. I need to review the transaction history on this account, I said, keeping my voice steady. And I want to know why there are charges I do not recognize. The teller typed on her keyboard. She frowned. She typed again. Then she looked at me, then down at my slightly scuffed shoes, and back at the screen. Mum, she said, lowering her voice. This account has a balance of, well, there is over $400,000 in outstanding debt. The activity is very high. Resorts, jewelry stores, leasing companies. I am just an authorized user, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. My son told me it was a family card. The teller bit her lip. One moment. I think you need to speak to Mr. Alvarez. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a glass-walled office. Mr. Alvarez, the branch manager, looked at the computer screen with a grave expression. He printed out a stack of paper an inch thick and placed it on the desk between us. Mrs. Doyle? Mr. Alvarez said, folding his hands. There seems to be a significant misunderstanding. You are not just an authorized user. What? What do you mean? I asked, gripping the arms of the chair. This credit line is secured against business assets, he explained. Specifically, the assets of Sunrise Clean and Care. But the primary guarantor on the personal liability clause is not Evan Doyle. It is you. You are the co-owner of this debt vehicle. Your signature is on the master agreement. The room spun. I had signed those papers, the temporary authorizations Evan had brought to the dinner table. He had tricked me into co-signing a mountain of debt that he was using to fund his lifestyle. He told me it was just for payroll, I whispered, feeling the bile rise in my throat. Mr. Alvarez pushed the stack of papers toward me. His eyes were hard, not at me, but at the situation. Mrs. Doyle, he said firmly, if you did not knowingly authorize these expenditures, this is fraud, and since you are the primary guarantor, you have the absolute right to freeze everything, immediately. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. It looks like your son forgot to mention a few things, Mr. Alvarez said. And I can tell you right now, the law is not on his side. Mr. Alvarez did not just give me a phone number. He made the call himself. He told me that the bank had a vested interest in ensuring the collateral my company was not being stripped by a fraudulent authorized user. Within an hour, I was walking into the offices of Blake and Steiner, a firm tucked away in a brick building that smelled of old paper and serious intent. That was where I met Jordan Blake. She was a woman of about 45, with sharp features and eyes that looked like they had seen every possible way human beings could hurt each other over money. She did not offer me tea or sympathy. She offered me a handshake that felt like a contract in itself. Mr. Alvarez tells me you are in a volatile situation. Mrs. Doyle, Jordan said, gesturing to the leather chair opposite her desk. Start from the beginning. Do not leave anything out. I sat down and began to talk. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. I had to strip away my pride layer by layer. I told her about the house rules Sabrina had implemented. I told her about the basement, the smart lock, and the night I spent shivering on the concrete floor. I told her about the missing deed and the papers I signed just to keep the peace at dinner. As the words left my mouth, I felt a burning flush of shame crawl up my neck. I let them do it, I stammered, looking down at my hands. I handed them the knife and bared my own throat. Jordan leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. Listen to me, Margaret. You did not hand them a knife. You trusted your family. What you are describing is a textbook case of financial elder abuse. And that talk about your memory, the suggestion that you should see a specialist, Sabrina said it was for my health. I whispered. No, Jordan said, her voice hard. It is a strategy. They are building a case for incapacitation. If they can get a court to declare you mentally incompetent, Evan becomes your legal guardian. He gets full control of your assets, your company, and your life. They were not locking you in that basement to calm you down. They were dry running a prison sentence. The air left the room. I had suspected it, but hearing it said aloud by a lawyer made it real. They were not just bad children. They were criminals. So, what do we do? I asked, my voice steadying. We go on the offensive, Jordan said, pulling a yellow legal pad toward her. First, we send a formal notice to Liberty Crest Bank immediately. We freeze every credit line and account that lists you as a guarantor. That cuts off Evan's cash flow by 5 o'clock today. Second, we revoke every power of attorney document you have signed in the last 12 months. She paused, tapping her pen on the desk. I also recommend we hire a private investigator. We need to know if Evan has already filed for guardianship or if he is moving Sunrise Clean and Care assets into shell companies. I know a guy. He is expensive, but he is good. Do it, I said without hesitation. The retainer for the firm and the investigator will be $5,000 up front, Jordan said. I reached into my purse and pulled out the platinum card, the one with Evan Doyle embossed on the front. Use this, I said, sliding it across the mahogany desk. Jordan looked at the card, then up at me. A slow, sharp smile touched her lips. He is the primary account holder for the billing, but I am the guarantor, I explained. It is poetic justice, don't you think? I think I'm going to enjoy representing you, Margaret, Jordan said. She advised me not to return to the motel. It was too easy to track credit card usage if Evan checked the online portal before the freeze took effect. Instead, she arranged for me to stay in a small efficiency apartment the firm kept for high-risk clients. She also made me destroy my SIM card and set up a new encrypted email account. That evening, I sat on a beige IKEA sofa in a silent, sterile apartment that smelled of lemon polish. Spread out on the coffee table were the documents Mr. Alvarez had printed. I read them under the harsh light of a floor lamp. Every startup failure, every luxury vacation, every successful quarter Evan had bragged about, it was all there. And at the bottom of every significant loan, there was my name. I was the foundation of his entire life. But he had treated me like a crumbling pillar that needed to be demolished. I picked up the pen to sign the engagement letter Jordan had given me. My hand hovered over the paper. For 40 years, I had signed contracts to build a future for my son. I had signed tuition checks, car loans, and mortgage guarantees. From now on, I whispered to the empty room, feeling a tear track down my cheek. Every time my pen touches paper, it is to save me from him, not to save him. I signed my name. The ink was dark and permanent. The war had officially begun. 2 days later, I was back in the conference room at Blake & Steiner. The air smelled of stale coffee and impending doom. Sitting across from me was Marcus Hale, the private investigator Jordan had hired. He was a thick-set man in his 50s, with a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite and eyes that held zero judgment, only facts. He slid a manila folder across the polished table. "It is worse than we thought. Mrs. Doyle," Marcus said, his voice gravelly and low. "Your son has been busy. I found a consultation record with a probate attorney in downtown Redstone. Evan is building a case to prove you are mentally incompetent. His narrative is that you are paranoid and have a history of self-isolating in dangerous places, like basements." I felt the blood drain from my face. "He is saying I locked myself in." "That is the story he is selling." Marcus confirmed. "But I have something that kills that story dead." He pulled out a second sheet of paper. It was a printout of digital logs. "The smart home system in Evan's house is managed by SecureTech. By a happy coincidence, SecureTech used to be one of your biggest commercial clients for Sunrise Clean and Care. I called in a favor," Marcus said, tapping the paper with a thick finger. "These are the server logs for the basement door. At 7:45 p.m. on Tuesday, the lock was not engaged manually from the inside. It was engaged via the admin app. User profile Evan Doyle. He used his phone," I whispered, staring at the timestamp. "He was standing right there, and he used his phone." "It proves intent," Jordan added, her eyes sharp as she reviewed the sheet. "It proves unlawful confinement." Marcus was not finished. He fanned out a series of glossy photographs on the table. They showed Evan, looking tan and fit, on the deck of a yacht. Another showed him at a table with white tablecloths, laughing, raising a glass of champagne. "Florida," Marcus said. 3 weeks ago, he billed the flight, the charter, and the dinners to the Pulsegate Labs expense account. That is the account you guarantee. Margaret, the bill for that weekend was over $12,000. But it was the person next to him in the photos that made my stomach turn. It was not Sabrina. It was a young woman with dark hair and a tight dress. "Tara Cole," Marcus said. 24 years old. She is listed as a marketing assistant at Pulsegate, but she barely shows up to the office. Evan is paying the rent on her apartment in the city using company funds. I looked at the photo of Evan, He was laughing, his head thrown back, his hand resting possessively on the girl's waist. He looked so happy, so rich. I closed my eyes, and suddenly, I was not in a law office. I was in our old kitchen, 20 years ago. Evan was 7. Tears streaming down his face, clinging to my neck. "Mommy, don't go." The 7-year-old Evan had sobbed. "The kids at school say you smell like bleach. They say you are the garbage lady. Please don't go." I had hugged him, smelling the bleach on my own skin, and promised him I was working so he would never have to smell like that. I had worked myself to the bone to scrub the scent of poverty off him. And now he was using the money from my sweat to buy a life where I did not exist, except as a bank account. "This is leverage," Jordan said, breaking my trance. "Using guaranteed business funds to support a mistress is not just immoral. It is misappropriation of assets. It is theft. It proves he is not acting in the fiduciary interest of the company." Then she slid a tablet toward me. "And there is this. Sabrina has been busy too." On the screen were drafts of social media posts, photos of me looking tired, confused, or messy, with captions Sabrina had written but not yet posted. So hard watching a loved one lose their grip on reality. Dementia is a thief. Grandma had a rough day again. Pray for us as we make hard decisions for her safety. "They are priming the public," Jordan said, her voice dripping with disgust. "They are planting the seeds, so when they commit you, everyone will say it was for the best." I pushed the tablet away. I felt sick. "We have enough," Jordan said, closing the folder. "I am preparing a report for Adult Protective Services and the district attorney. We are going to file for an emergency injunction to strip him of access to all accounts immediately. But I need you to be sure. Margaret, once we file this, there is no going back. This is criminal." That night, lying in the narrow bed of the safe house apartment, I stared at the ceiling. The streetlights outside cast bars of shadow across the room. I thought about sending my only son to prison. I thought about Liam and Chloe growing up without a father. But then I felt the phantom sensation of that cold basement floor against my hip. I remembered the sound of the lock clicking shut. I remembered the terrifying realization that my son did not see a mother, but a signature he needed to extract. He did not just lock a door. I whispered to the empty room, my voice shaking. He buried me. He buried me alive. I am just digging my way out. I closed my eyes and waited for the morning, ready to hand the shovel to the district attorney. The hearing for the emergency protection order took place in a courtroom that was smaller and shabbier than anything I had seen on television. The air was stifling, smelling of old floor wax and nervous sweat. When I walked in with Jordan, I saw them. Evan was wearing his navy blue suit, the one I had bought him for his graduation, and Sabrina was dressed in a modest cardigan, clutching a tissue. They looked like the perfect, grieving family. For a second, my heart lurched in my chest, but then I remembered the click of the lock. Evan took the stand first. He looked at the judge with wide, earnest eyes. "Your Honor," Evan said, his voice trembling just enough to sound heartbroken. "My mother has been struggling since my father died. It has gotten worse lately. She has these episodes where she believes there is bad energy in the house. She goes down to the basement and locks herself in. She says it is the only place she feels safe. We were just trying to respect her space until she calmed down." I dug my fingernails into my palms. He was painting me as a senile eccentric. Then it was Sabrina's turn. She dabbed at her dry eyes and looked at the judge. "We are terrified," she sobbed softly. She forgets to turn off the stove. She leaves the front door wide open. Last week, I found her wandering in the garden at 3 a.m. We have small children, Your Honor. We have to protect them. We never locked her in. She does it to herself. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, looked at me with pity. I felt the walls closing in again. Then Jordan stood up. She did not raise her voice. She simply walked to the bench and placed a single sheet of paper down. "Your Honor," Jordan said coolly, "these are the server logs from the SecureTech smart home system installed at the Doyle residence. They show that on Tuesday night at 7:45, the basement door was not locked manually from the inside. It was locked via the administrative application on a smartphone. The device ID matches Mr. Evan Doyle's phone." The room went silent. Evan shifted in his seat. Jordan continued, sliding a folder of photographs across the bench. "And regarding Mrs. Doyle's safety, I present these photos taken by a physician 2 days ago. They show severe bruising on my client's left hip and lower back, consistent with a fall down a flight of stairs. A fall caused when her son pushed her." The judge looked at the logs, then at the photos. Her expression of pity vanished, replaced by cold scrutiny. She turned to Evan. "Mr. Doyle," the judge asked, her voice sharp, "if you believed your mother was having a mental health crisis and was a danger to herself, why did you not call 911? Why did you use an app to seal her in a basement without a bathroom for 8 hours?" Evan stood up, his face flushing red. We didn't want to embarrass her. We were handling it as a family matter. She needed a timeout." "A timeout," the judge repeated, raising an eyebrow. "She is a 62-year-old woman, not a toddler." Jordan did not let up. "Your Honor, the motivation here is not safety. It is financial. I have here bank statements showing that in the last 3 months, Mr. Doyle has charged over $40,000 to a credit line guaranteed by my client." She held up a summary. "Luxury resorts, high-end dining, and the monthly rent for an apartment in the city occupied by a Miss Tara Cole, who is an employee of Mr. Doyle's company." Evan jumped to his feet. The mask of the concerned son shattered completely. "Objection," Evan shouted, pointing a shaking finger at Jordan. That is irrelevant. That is my private life. I have a right to use company money however I see fit to run my business." Jordan smiled. It was a small, predatory smile. "Thank you, Mr. Doyle. You just admitted on the record to commingling funds and using assets guaranteed by my client for personal use." Evan froze. He looked at his lawyer, who had his face buried in his hands. The judge banged her gavel. The sound was like a gunshot. "I have heard enough," the judge stated firmly. "The court grants the temporary protection order. Mr. Doyle, Mrs. Doyle Reeves, you are to stay 500 feet away from the plaintiff. You are ordered to surrender all keys, passwords, and access tokens related to Sunrise Clean and Care immediately. Furthermore, I am ordering a forensic audit of Pulsegate Labs to commence by Monday morning." As the bailiff ushered us out, I passed by Sabrina. Her face was pale, stripped of its fake sweetness. She leaned in close to me, her voice a low hiss. "You will regret this," she whispered, her eyes darting around. You are going to regret doing this to your own son." But as she pulled back, I saw it. Beneath the anger, her pupils were dilated. Her hands were shaking. She was terrified. For the first time in years, she looked at me and did not see a victim. She saw the woman who had built a business from nothing. And she realized too late that she had tried to bury a landmine. The victory in the courtroom did not bring silence. Instead, it unleashed a storm of noise. In the days following the hearing, Evan launched a war, not in the courts, but on the internet. He posted a long, rambling status on his social media profile, painting himself as the victim of a bitter, controlling mother who was being manipulated by predatory lawyers. My phone began to ring with calls from distant cousins and old family friends. They did not ask how I was. They accused, "Margaret, how could you do this?" My cousin Linda asked, her voice shrill. "He is your son. You are humiliating him publicly because of some senile paranoia." Jordan advised me to keep my phone off and stay away from the comments section. "It is a distraction, Margaret," Jordan told me, her voice calm over the speakerphone. "He is trying to win in the court of public opinion because he knows he is going to lose in the court of law. Do not engage." I obeyed her, but the words stung. I sat in the quiet apartment, reading the printed screenshots Jordan had sent for the file. Every insult, every lie my son told to save his own skin felt like a physical blow. He was not just fighting for his assets. He was willing to burn my reputation to ash if it meant he could walk away with the money. Then, on a Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed with a number I did not recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some instinct made me answer. "Hello," I said. "Grandma," a small voice whispered. My heart stopped. "Liam, honey, is that you? Why didn't you come to my soccer game?" He asked. The hurt in his voice was palpable. "You always come, Mom said. Mom said you aren't coming anymore because you chose money instead of family." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "No, Liam, that is not true. I love you. I am trying to fix some bad things so we can all be safe. I did not choose money." "But Mom said you want to put Dad in jail." Liam sniffled. "She said you are being mean." "Liam, listen to me." I started, tears streaming down my face. Suddenly, there was a scuffling sound on the other end. "Who are you talking to?" Sabrina's voice shrieked in the background. "Give me that phone." "Mom, no!" Liam cried out. "I told you never to call her." Sabrina yelled. The line went dead. I sat alone on the beige sofa, burying my face in my hands. The silence of the apartment felt heavy, like a physical weight. Was I the monster in the eyes of my 7-year-old grandson? I was the villain who had abandoned him. The pain was worse than the bruised hip, worse than the cold basement floor. The next morning, Jordan arrived at the apartment. She did not bring coffee this time. She brought a grim expression and a thick file. "The district attorney is officially opening a criminal investigation," Jordan said, sitting opposite me. "They are looking at financial elder abuse, fraud, and unlawful imprisonment. The logs from the smart lock were the smoking gun, but the forensic audit turned up something else." She slid a paper across the table. "Evan has been paying consulting fees of $5,000 a month to a company called Zenith Solutions." Jordan explained. "We traced the ownership. Zenith is a shell company registered to Logan Reeves." "Sabrina's brother?" I asked, feeling sick. Yes, Jordan nodded. They were siphoning money out of Sunrise Clean and Care and Pulsegate, hiding it in her brother's accounts. It is conspiracy to commit fraud. It is a felony. Margaret. I stared at the numbers. They had all been in on it. My son, his wife, her brother. They had looked at my life's work and seen a carcass to be picked clean. Jordan leaned forward, her gaze intense. If we proceed with full cooperation, Evan is looking at significant prison time. 5 years, maybe more. I need to know right now. Margaret, are you prepared for that? Can you send your son to prison? I could not answer her. I asked her to leave me alone for the night. I did not sleep. Instead, I pulled out an old box I had saved from the townhouse before the move. Inside were my old work journals from the early days of the company. I flipped through the yellowed pages until I found an entry from 20 years ago. Evan was 12. I had taken him to a job site to help mop a gymnasium. Evan quit after 10 minutes. I had written in my jagged handwriting. He said the ammonia smell made him dizzy. I told him to go sit in the van and play his Game Boy. I finished the floor myself. I did not want him to be uncomfortable. I ran my finger over the ink. I had done it. I had done it 1,000 times. Every time life got hard. I shielded him. When he failed a class, I hired a tutor. When he crashed his first car, I bought him a new one. I had taught him that consequences were things that happened to other people, not to him. I had forgiven his weakness so many times that he began to view my forgiveness as an entitlement. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. The woman staring back looked tired, but her eyes were clear. The guilt that had been choking me since Liam's call began to loosen. I am not sending him to prison, I said to my reflection, my voice steady in the quiet room. He walked in there himself. He locked the door behind him the moment he stole from me. I am just refusing to stand guard for him anymore. I picked up the phone and dialed Jordan's number. Do it, I said when she answered. Give the district attorney everything. I am done protecting him. The final hearing took place in a cavernous courtroom that smelled of mahogany and judgment. The gallery was full, buzzing with local reporters drawn by the headline of a wealthy family in Redstone City cannibalizing their matriarch. I sat next to Jordan, my back straight, refusing to look at the defense table where Evan, Sabrina, and Logan sat like 3 vultures whose wings had been clipped. The district attorney, a sharp man named Mr. Henderson, laid out the timeline with brutal clarity. He connected the dots from the unauthorized credit card usage to the locking of the basement door, and finally to the shell company accounts managed by Logan Reeves. It was a map of greed. These were not the actions of concerned children, Mr. Henderson told the jury. These were the calculated moves of a criminal enterprise operating within a domestic setting. Then Jordan called the representative from Secure Tech. He was a young engineer who looked nervous, but spoke clearly. No, sir, the engineer said, adjusting his glasses. The Model X5 smart lock does not have an automatic safety engagement feature. It requires a direct command. The user had to open the app, select the basement door, and press deadbolt engage. It is a deliberate 3-step process. But the room truly fell silent when the video played. Marcus had retrieved the footage from the cloud before Evan could scrub it. On the large monitors, the grainy black and white image showed me standing at the top of the stairs. It showed Evan's arm shove out. It showed my body tumbling backward, hitting the concrete. Then, the audio filled the courtroom, the sound of the door slamming and the mechanical whir of the lock. And then, Sabrina's voice, clear and cruel. She stays down there until she signs. Evan, we are not playing games. I heard a gasp from the gallery. Evan put his head in his hands. Sabrina stared straight ahead, her face pale as a sheet. When Evan took the stand, he tried to cling to his script. We just wanted Mom to be safe. She was hysterical. Is that right, Mr. Doyle? The prosecutor asked, holding up a printout. Then can you explain this email you sent to your probate attorney 3 days before the incident? The one where you ask, how much mental decline do we need to prove to trigger a restructuring of the assets? Evan began to sweat. He loosened his tie. I was just asking for legal advice. It was hypothetical. It looks premeditated to me. The prosecutor shot back. Sabrina fared no better. When confronted with her vlogs videos, where she filmed me scrubbing the floor in the background with captions like, "Cleaning lady is slow today," she tried to smile. It is just content, she said, her voice high and tight. It is comedy. We joke around. It is satire. The judge stared at her over the rim of his glasses. There is nothing funny about humiliating the woman who paid for the roof over your head. Mrs. Reeves Doyle? Then came Logan. He tried to claim the consulting contracts were legitimate, but the text messages Jordan had subpoenaed destroyed him. A text from him to Sabrina read, "Get the old lady into a facility and lock the files. Once she is declared incompetent, the money is ours." When it was my turn to speak, I stood up. I did not cry. I had no tears left. I spent 40 years scrubbing other people's toilets, I said, my voice echoing in the quiet room. I breathed in chemicals and ruined my knees so that I could build a wall of money around my family. I thought I was buying them safety, but I realized that safety without character is just rot. My son took the very security I gave him and turned it into a weapon against me. He locked me in a basement that I paid for, with a lock I bought. I looked directly at Evan. He would not meet my eyes. You broke my heart. Evan, I said softly, but you did not break me. The gavel came down an hour later. Logan Reeves was sentenced to 4 years in prison for wire fraud and conspiracy. Evan and Sabrina were found guilty of financial elder abuse and unlawful imprisonment. Because it was a first offence, they received 5 years of probation. But the terms were ruinous. They were ordered to pay full restitution of every cent they had stolen. They were stripped of all power of attorney. And most importantly, the judge issued a permanent restraining order. Ownership of Sunrise Clean and Care is returned in full to Mrs. Margaret Doyle, the judge declared. Furthermore, the court orders the creation of a trust for the minor children, Liam and Chloe, to be administered by an independent fiduciary. The parents shall have no access to these funds. It was over. I walked out of the courthouse into the late afternoon light. The sky over Redstone City was a heavy, slate grey, promising snow. Reporters shouted questions, camera flashes popping like lightning. But I ignored them. I stopped on the concrete steps and took a deep breath of the freezing air. My hip still ached, a permanent reminder of the fall. But my back was straight. I was 62 years old. I was alone. I had no son, no daughter-in-law, and I would have to fight to see my grandchildren again. But as I pulled my coat tighter against the wind, I felt a strange, terrifying lightness in my chest. I did not just escape a basement. I whispered to the wind, realizing the truth for the first time. I unlocked myself. I turned my back on the courthouse, on the cameras, and on the ruins of the family I had tried so hard to buy. I walked toward the street, not knowing exactly where I was going next, but knowing that for the first time in my life, the direction was entirely up to me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on the verdict. Did Evan get what he deserved? If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the Grandma's Family Diary channel, smash that like button, and hit the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Stay safe out there, and remember to protect yourself, no matter who you trust.